the Labor Party this morning, with New South Wales Premier Chris Minns challenging Anthony Albanese over broken promises and rising tax burdens. The Premier says income earners paying the highest marginal tax rate of 47% are effectively working half the week for the federal government. Minns also demanding more action to tackle bracket creep. For their take, let's bring in Sunshine Coast Mayor Rosanna Natoli and WA Opposition Leader Basil Zempilas. Morning to both of you.
Morning.
The front page of the Nightly has captured the rift, calling it Fight Club, and that the first rule of Labor is don't talk about the budget like this. Basil, Chris Minns says families are being stung. This is pretty extraordinary, isn't it, for a state Labor leader, a big one like this one especially, and the Prime Minister to be clashing.
It really does tell you everything that you need to know. And Chris Minns has broken the rules of Fight Club, or Budget Club as it might be for Labor. Look, you can't get much worse than this. An unpopular budget not testing well with the population of the country. And then Chris Minns, one of the new generation of Labor leaders, and a similar generation, I guess, as Jim Chalmers. And they're a similar face for modern Labor. And then so publicly and openly at war over the interpretation or basically the desired success or otherwise of this budget. So this is bad news for the Prime Minister and bad news for Jim Chalmers. And I think the other problem here is Minns, although not super well known outside of New South Wales prior to the Bondi tragedy, he really grew in everybody's standing and I think in estimations the way he handled that crisis. He showed superior judgment to the Prime Minister. So now for that person to be coming out and bagging the budget, that is a big, big blow for the Prime Minister and the Treasurer. Huge.
Yeah, yes, he is a popular Premier, that's for sure. Rosanna, now you've got Chalmers hitting back, so it's Minns v Chalmers, as well as the federal government trying to sell the budget.
I think what we need to remember is that this kind of infighting in a political party doesn't actually mean much to everyday Australians who are thinking about, do I work more hours? Do I try and get a second job to help pay for the cost of living? Because whether you call it bracket creep or whether you call it a cost of living crisis, things cost more money, everything is costing more, and wages are not going up. So this is about how do we have more in our pocket if we work harder. And that's what we're seeing this sort of revolt against, I guess, is that whole idea, the Australian ethic is that if you work really hard, you get more money. And what's happening now is that you work really hard and it just feels like the treadmill is going faster instead of getting you anywhere.
Yeah, but the government tried to put out this Treasury note saying this won't affect everyone. The CGT will effectively go from 19 to 21% or something for a lot of small businesses. It's not cutting through with a lot of people who are telling us on the text line. What does the government do here?
Look, alongside Malinowskis, I'd say Minns is the gold standard Labor Premier. That's a fact, I think. And to have that person openly criticising the Prime Minister and the Federal Treasurer's budget, that is disaster for Labor. Absolutely disaster. When they're trying to sell this budget, not getting much traction, it's already unpopular, and then one of their golden boys comes out and bags it. That's as bad as it can get. Okay. It can't get any worse.
There's no doubt that from a political point of view, this is not great for anyone in the Labor government at any level, really, because infighting is never popular. It's never going to go down well. But, you know, let's talk about what does it actually mean in your pocket when you go home, and that's where we're seeing less and less, and that's the difficulty.
OK, let's look at the flip side. A lot of people agree changes needed to be made. The government is trying this. Do they wait and try and explain it because people won't be affected to the degree that is in a lot of the media today? Basil, do you think they will wind things back or they'll dig in and try and explain it?
Thought a lot about that over the last 24 hours. I've got no doubt they're strategizing and wargaming. Do we walk back from it? Do we come out now, say, sorry, we listened, we got it wrong, we're going back the other way? I think that earns you some cred with the Australian population when people do that sincerely. But they seem so invested in it. They seem so committed to it. It's a massive backward step if they do that. I think they're going to stay the course, and that could spell a real disaster for them. And I think the federal coalition's budget in reply has been well received compared to Labor's offering.
OK, Rosanna, which bits are people telling you in your electorate in Queensland are the most important bits that they're concerned about?
Well, so certainly we're hearing that small business, we have a lot of small business for the economy up in Queensland. So the small business is something that is really coming to the fore. But then also that idea of the tax bracket once you get, through those different levels. So it's a difficult call to ask a federal government to backtrack on something as big as a budget, but if they don't, then they also have to be prepared for the backlash with that.
Baz, what do you do? You can't backtrack on everything. What do you do?
I can tell you what's unpopular over here. The fact that the Prime Minister went to the election saying there will be no changes to capital gains tax, there will be no changes to negative gearing, and then there are changes. And when WA's in a fight for its share of the GST, now nobody can trust the word of the Prime Minister. That's a big problem for him and a huge issue here in WA.
OK, well, coalition governments have broken promises before. So did they ride this out? Did they dig in? Baz?
Well, I think they will. I think they will be assessing the potential damage. I just think the language has been strong, although it seemed to soften yesterday. But, gee, it's a big, big step for the Prime Minister to walk back from this. And what would that say about his leadership? And would he even lead to the next election if he did that? So he'll be thinking about the personal as well as the political for the party.
OK. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Here's Chevo.
Thanks, Nat.